Hello, everyone. This is Tanya Devane with the Omnia Group, and I want to welcome everyone to the Omnia Group's Leadership Advantage webinar. And while you all are completing the polls, I want to go ahead and do a couple little housekeeping. You'll see at the top there's a man with his hand raised. If you need to communicate to me, definitely just hit the arrow and you can raise your hand. You can agree, disagree. If you need me to speak louder, softer, if you want to give me kudos, applause, definitely use the little man with the hand raised. And I'll be asking questions throughout the webinar. And so I would really enjoy if you would utilize him to show that there's some, to show that you all are hearing me and answering the questions. So I'll give you all a few more seconds to complete both polls. So the first one is, what is the percentage of people leaving organizations because of leadership? And then the second one is a true or false. The clarity of expectations is perhaps the most basic of employee needs and is vital to performance. So we'll go ahead and do a countdown of 10 seconds to let everyone have a chance to complete the polls. And I can see for the first one, there's a little difference of opinion. And the second one, it seems like we have everyone on one side. Perfect. And so we'll do a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's go ahead and broadcast the results for the first one. So what is the percentage of people leaving organizations because of leadership? Well, a new Gallup study sheds new light on this concept about worker-manager relationships, and the findings said there was about 50% of the 7,200 adults surveyed left a job to quote unquote get away from the manager. So for the individuals, 31% of you all got it absolutely correct. I see a lot of people put the 76%. You all thought that it was a little bit higher. It is a high number. Could you just imagine? Think about your staff right now. If 50% of the people left because of leadership, that would definitely hurt business. So it's wonderful that you all joined us today for this leadership advantage. So let's look at the second poll. Clarity of expectations is perhaps the most basic of employee needs and is vital to the performance. So let's go ahead and broadcast those results. And most of you all, 97% of you all said true, and that is absolutely correct. According to that same Gallup poll, that the happier employees stated that their managers help set their work priorities. And the key word there is help. So it's not saying that the manager did everything for them, but the happier employees, the more engaged employees, the employees that that kind of sticks around and adds tenure, they said their manager helps them with priority. So it's kind of working in unison. So today is the kickoff of our series on leadership. And next week, we are going to have how to succeed as a first-time manager. And this is a great refresher for managers who have been in the role for a while as well. So even if you're not a first-time manager, this is definitely a something that you'd want to, the series you want to check out as well. Then following that, it'll be how soft skills affect leadership, which will highlight how the combination of interpersonal skills, social skills, communication skills affect your leadership. And to round out the series, we will discuss how to develop your team, because we all definitely want highly productive teams. We all want to see, our teams being like well-oiled machines and everybody's working to their strengths. And so today we're going to talk about the leadership advantage. And growing research indicates people who possess a deep self-awareness and are able to connect and engage with their team in meaningful ways makes them successful leaders. When you become self-aware, you are then able to create possibilities from those challenges instead of having those challenges limit you. And from that place, you're then able to lead with understanding of how to choose new actions to generate the outcomes you want. So basically, when we're talking about leadership advantage, we're talking about self-awareness. And there are 17 different leadership styles with their own unique strengths and challenges. And when we're talking about those leadership styles, it really depends on your dominant traits. So, are you a competitive versus a helpful type of individual? Are you expressive versus analytical? Or are you expeditious versus systematic? And lastly, are you autonomous versus by the book? So when we're talking about the combination of these dominant traits, what happens is you build a graph, and you build a graph of your innate behaviors. And so when we're talking about the graph, this is what we're talking about here. Then I hope everyone had an opportunity to download the Draw Your Own Graph. And if you didn't, don't worry. All you need is a piece of paper, and you can see that you want to go ahead and put 8 columns in a row on that piece of paper. And then when we're going through the presentation, I'm going to talk about different dominant traits. So you will then go ahead and select whether or not you feel like you're on the left side or the right side. And as you can see, they're broken up in pairs. So 1 and 2 are pairs, 3 and 4 are pairs, 5 and 6 are pairs, and 7 and 8 are pairs. And when we're talking about these pairs, they are opposites of each other. So as one column goes up, the other column goes down. And you can see that they go up to 6. So that means columns 1 and 2, they have to equal 6. So for example, let's say if I feel like I'm a tall column 1. So I'm going to go ahead and fill all the way up to the 6th line. So I'm 5, I have 5 boxes completed. And then I'm going to put 1 box over here for column 2, and that equals 6. So 5 plus 1 is 6. What I can't have is all the way up on both sides, like 2 5s, because that would be 10. So when you're completing the Draw Your Own Graph, just remember you can have a little bit of the reciprocal column. You just can't have both columns be equal. You have to have one column higher than the other. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about these dominant traits and what builds our leadership style. So the first one is our competitive, and this is going to be our column 1 type of individuals. And all of these columns have their strengths, and all of these columns have their challenges. So when we're talking about the column 1s, they are assertive, proactive, play to win. They like to impact their bottom line through their individual efforts. And the leadership styles that typically fall within this range are our visionary leaders and our tenacious leaders. So you remember I said all of the columns have their strengths and all of the columns have their challenges. The challenges for these column 1s are the assertive, competitive type of individuals is sometimes that they can be aggressive. They can be too demanding. We probably all have experienced individuals that were a little too pushy. Well, they go past that line of assertiveness, because we definitely want someone assertive in certain type of roles. That assertiveness is a good thing, but if they move over to that aggressive behavior, now you've pushed people away. Now you're hurting brand recognition. And when we're talking about you as a leader, if you move over to that aggressive behavior, then instead of pushing people to their best, you can actually push them over the cliff, because you're pushing them too hard. You're trying to make it happen too much, and that individual is not necessarily going to be receptive to that. The next thing is backing down, because the competitive and column 1 type of individuals, they want to win at all costs. Sometimes they have a harder time conceding and saying, okay, I didn't get this one, I'll get the next one, because they want to win every single time. And if we could win every single time, wouldn't that just be a great world? Maybe not, because then we really wouldn't relish and enjoy our wins, because it would just be like old hat to us. So understanding that you don't have to win every single time as a manager. Then lastly is setting realistic goals. And it's going to go back to that wanting to win at all costs, wanting to make it happen. As a manager, you can sometimes set aggressive type of goals for your team. We definitely want to give people stretch goals, but we don't want them to stretch so much that they break. And that can sometimes happen when excuse me, that can sometimes happen when you try to win at all costs. Because, I'm just going to make sure that it happens, and I'm going to push my people, and they're going to get everything done in lickety split really fast. And my department's going to be the highest grossing, the best department ever. And the way I'm going to do it is just drive my people. And you don't want to drive them away. You want to drive them towards the goal. And if you're setting unrealistic goals, people will then start to leave because they feel like it's too much pressure. So you want to make sure that you're keeping yourself in check. And that's the great thing about understanding who you truly are. Because if you are this competitive, assertive person, you know that, okay, I know that I can sometimes be too much and that I need to kind of dial it down a little bit. So understanding that is very beneficial in regards to moving forward and improving your team and keeping your team engaged, because now you have them at the perfect point, at that perfect working order where you're pushing them enough to drive them faster, but you're not pushing them enough where they want to drive away. And on the other side of that are our helpful managers. And these are the individuals that are collaborative, supportive, team-oriented type of individuals. They are the behind the scenes. The individuals that fall within this leadership style are our collaborative leaders and our supportive leaders, because they have this sense of bringing people together. I want to make sure that everybody feels like they have an equal part or an equal say in regards to this organization, in regards to the where we're going to move this team, in regards to our priorities. So the helpful type of manager is the manager or leader that truly wants to have those kumbaya moments, but those positive, productive type of kumbaya moments. The challenge, however, for our helpful leaders is taking initiative in new settings, meaning because they are not necessarily risk takers. So if we could, have a crystal ball and say, okay, this is how everything is going to work out, then nothing would be a risk. But we all know that doesn't happen. I know, if I said everyone raise their hand who on Monday morning there's a new fire that you have to put out that you didn't expect, I bet I would get everybody's hand raised, because when we're dealing with individuals, we don't know what's going to happen the next day necessarily, and we have to be comfortable with kind of stepping out and taking those risks. Column twos are the helpful type of managers. They have a harder time with that. They also have a harder time exhorting, being upfront, being the ones that say, okay, this is what we're going to do, because they want to go back to that strength, having everybody come together. So I want everybody to kind of decide that this is what we're going to do. But at the end of the day, we all know that that's not necessarily going to be the case. We have a whole webinar series on conflict resolution, because not everybody's going to come together and have the same decision. And as a leader, that is one of your responsibilities, that you have to say, okay, I've heard both sides, but this is the direction that we're going to take. And sometimes helpful individuals have a harder time. That's one of the challenges that you have, is regards to laying down the law and say, okay, this is how we're going to move forward. And then negotiating. With our people, we have to negotiate sometimes, and everybody is not going to come out, winning. Some people are going to be like, okay, I didn't win this one, but I can get the next one. And negotiating is a challenge for our helpful individuals, because they want everybody to win. And everybody can't win. And when we think about that, that can, it's just basically the reality of life. Not everybody's going to win, but understanding that about yourself and internalizing that can help the helpful managers, those collaborative, supportive leaders, get over the hump, to make their teams more productive. So now we've talked about you as individuals. So you can go ahead and shade in whether or not you think you're a tall column 1 or a tall column 2. And as you all are shading in, let's talk about your team. So let's talk about if you are managing a competitor. So let's say if you're managing that tall column 1. You want to get the most out of them, you want to give them ways to keep score. It could be a board up, something that lets them know, when you're giving them priorities, when you are goal setting with them, giving them a way that they can feel the win, that they can say, yes, I came in first, no matter what it is. Just giving them that opportunity is beneficial. Next, you want to be able to provide them opportunities to lead. And while, I'm not saying that, okay, everybody that's a column one, you have to go out now and promote them and give them a title. I'm not saying that. Column ones are motivated by money or power. And when I talk about power, I'm talking about added responsibility and added authority. So that could possibly mean, let's say you have a think tank session once a quarter. Let this person lead one of those sessions in regards to best practices that they have that they've added to their work life that has improved their work life. And now you're giving them that opportunity to lead, and they still have the same position title, but now they can start feeling that win, like they are mentoring and helping individuals. Then lastly, we talked about on that other side, money. So like I said, money or power. And that money, reward them with individual contributions. Now, I know you all are saying, Tanya, we don't have the budget for that. If they're in a role that is not commission based, I can't just all of a sudden just, twinkle my nose and come up with this money that I'm going to be able to offer them. So let's think a little bit creatively. When I talk about reward them for individual contributions, I'm talking about if you have a stellar performer, maybe give them, let them leave early on Friday. I like to talk about, we talk about engagement and we talk about ice cream socials and pizza parties and things like that. But if you have someone that started 2 days, 2 days ago, and you have an individual on staff that's been there 2 years and they are a stellar person, and the only way that you reward this team is by you give them an ice cream social. And I'm not saying ice cream socials are bad. I love ice cream and I love Jimmy's, or some people might call them sprinkles. I love them. And so, I'm not saying ban the ice cream socials, but what I am saying is that you can't reward the person that's been there 2 days the same thing as you rewarded someone that's been there 2 years and they have done an awesome job for you for 2 years. You can't reward them the same, because now it's like, why did I do all that? Because, you know, Cynthia that just started yesterday got the same thing I did. So that's when you want to reward their individual contributions, maybe letting them go a little early on Friday, giving them an extra day off, or maybe, providing a lunch, or a little gift card, a Starbucks gift card, something like that. That is how you can reward for their individual contributions. Now let's talk about if you are managing a column two. So now let's talk about if you're managing that helpful type of individual. To get the most out of them, you want them to know what piece of the puzzle their piece of the puzzle is playing in regards to the big picture. Like, for example, if it's your service team, I know when I go out to trade shows and conventions, and a client will come up to me and say, you know what, I spoke with Cynthia, I spoke with Marissa, I spoke with Joanna, and they are awesome. I just love your CA team. They are dynamic and amazing. That's a walking board right there. I mean, this service team is helping me, get business at the trade shows, at the conventions, because they're doing such a great job on that helpful supportive role that I don't really have to try to sell Omnia, because I have clients that are selling it for me. Or we have Sarah, she's helping me out today. I went and did a presentation at one of our clients, and they just raved about the PowerPoint. Before I even stepped up to the podium, she had already impacted our business, our brand recognition, how professional we are, because Sarah did a dynamic job on the PowerPoint. So your service people are definitely impacting you and letting them know that their piece, and it's not little, but their piece, what they're doing is really helping us when we go out in the field. So letting them know about their efforts. Also, when we're talking about our helpful, supportive people, I know one of the adjectives, or one of the ways I described them is that they like to work behind the scenes. Just because they like to work behind the scenes does not mean that they do not want to advance. They just don't need to be the CEO on their second day. I remember I worked for a company where one of our salespeople we hired him on, and he was like, well, do you think I could change my title? Do you think I could be, VP of sales? And the VP of sales said, well, that's my title. So, column ones, they want to move up quickly. Column twos are the helpful, supportive individuals. They don't necessarily need to move up, the next day, but they do want that career advancement. They do want that gaining knowledge, to keep them engaged. And lastly, if you're working, or excuse me, if you have a column two working for you, you want to provide them with safe goals, because remember, they are risk averse. So you want to provide them comfort. They like the non-commission type of positions. They like that stable type of salary. Those things are safe to them. So I'm not saying that we're going to, throw them softballs and say, okay, here you go. I know, we're going to congratulate you when you go to, when you go make a copy. All right, you did a great job, Kathy. Congratulations. That's not necessarily the goals. Then when I say provide safe goals, but just make sure that they're not too risky. Especially if you are a column one managing a column two. Remember, column ones, you all have a a tendency, or you can go to a very risky type of goal setting. If you're managing a column two, that can be a very scary place for them. So that's when you may need to dial it back a little bit, because you have to understand also who you're managing. So it's not only about it's also about who you're managing. So let's play a little game when we're talking about risk-free goals, and if you are willing to take a risk. It's going to be, I'm going to call it Let's Make a Deal-esque. So I am the host, and I have an envelope with at least $500 in it. Now, do you want to take the envelope, or do you want to take what's behind curtain number two, which could be valued from $0 to $10,000? Now, if you would take the envelope with a guaranteed $500 in it, go ahead with that man at the top, go ahead and click on agree. So click on agree if you would take the $500 envelope and just walk away. Now, if you want to take the curtain that's $0 to $10,000, go ahead and click on disagree. So you would click on disagree for $10,000 possibility, or agree for $500 guaranteed. So now, what if I said behind the curtain was a paid vacation to wherever you wanted to go? Does that change your mind? You can say agree, it changed my mind, or disagree, it didn't change my mind. Or what if I said it would be your dream car? Or if I said behind that curtain is a possibility that you could take a sabbatical. Your job, everything is safe. You would still get the same paycheck, but you just didn't have to come to work. You could take that sabbatical and do whatever you wanted to do for 3 months. Would that change your mind if that was an option behind that curtain? The reason I did this is to kind of show you that some of you all changed your mind in regards to whether or not you would keep that $500, the guaranteed $500, or if you wanted to, excuse me, or if you wanted to take the curtain. Because what happened was, it was the difference behind the curtain. Behind the curtain would be the difference. What was behind the curtain is the difference in regards to whether or not you want to take the risk. And that's the same thing with your people. So sometimes those helpful, supportive type of individuals, while they are risk averse, if you provide the right opportunity for them to take a risk on, you may see them take that risk a little bit more often. And how do we get them there? How do we get them to find out if they would take that risk? Is through communication. And communication brings us to our next segment, our next pairs, columns 3 and 4. So a tall column 3, or our expressive individuals, are individuals that are great at building relationships and rapport. They are our social individuals of the office. They are gregarious. They get energized by being able to speak and talk to individuals. that gives them their energy. The challenge for a tall column 3, however, is that sometimes they're not as active listeners. Sometimes column 3s may overtalk and underlisten. The facts and specifics they sometimes gloss over. And then sometimes column 3s, they're not as objective. The leadership styles that fall within this expressive type of type of leadership are our mediator leaders and our encouraging leaders. So when we're talking about these challenges, because the column 3s sometimes lead by emotion, it's harder for them to be objective because they have the feeling, that empathy for an individual. So sometimes they don't necessarily see things in black and white, and that can be a challenge. Also, if you're a column 3 and and you are managing another type of, let's say, a column 4, they want those facts and specifics. So sometimes it's a little bit harder for you to communicate that way, but understanding, okay, I know sometimes I gloss over the facts. So I know I need to do my research and really back up what I'm saying if I'm talking to a column 4. So as an expressive type of leader or as that mediator, encouraging leader, while that strength is definitely getting everybody pumped up, excited, you are the one that gets everybody going, the cheerleader of the office. The challenge is making sure that you back up, while you're getting everybody pumped up and excited, make sure that you're providing them with the facts, the data, the figures, the numbers as well. On the other side of that are the analytical type of individuals. These are the individuals that are great at asking questions. They are great at getting to the meat of the issue. They are practical problem solvers because they like to do the research. They're going to communicate in those facts and figure type of way. They're going to give you that data. But what's the challenge if you just had that? The challenge is communicating with diplomacy because if you're just looking at things black or white, it is what it is, the numbers say this and that's all I'm going to go by, then, people are not numbers, people are individuals. So sometimes those analytical managers, which are the logistical leaders and the consultative leaders, they can sometimes not necessarily be as diplomatic. Even though the consultative leader falls in this category, they are great at being a consultant, but not necessarily always communicating it in a diplomatic fashion. Also, a challenge for the analyticals is the networking, that social aspect. And when we're talking about you as a leader, going out into, throughout the office, having those personal type of conversations. I know when I consult with managers and I'm talking to them and I realize that they're tall column 4, that I make this suggestion. I say every week you should go ahead and put 4 pennies out on your desk. By the end of the week, you should have the 4 pennies should be inside of your desk because you should have congratulated or gave some 4 people kudos. So that means going out in your office, seeing what's really happening, congratulating, recognizing people for doing a great job. Because column 4s, they're like, well, they should know that they're doing a great job because they got their paycheck. So yeah, you didn't get fired, so guess what? You're doing a great job. But if you're dealing with the column 3, they need a little bit more than that paycheck. And with column 4s, this is not to say that you cannot go out there and network or go out there and have connections with individuals. It's just it does not energize you. It's something that you can do for a period of time, but then after that, it's like, okay, I'm done. Like I've used up all of my words now, and I need to go home and just sit on the couch. So the challenge of those column 4s is having that, having that social piece, understanding that these are individuals and that everything comes down to facts, figures, and numbers. So we talked a little bit about the tips and tips for dealing with or managing an expressive person, but I'll talk about a little bit more. And that is if you are managing column 3s, you want to make sure that you give them, public kudos. They like that recognition. They like that public recognition, meaning, let's send out a company-wide email when we're at a company meeting or in a departmental meeting. Let's give them shout outs. Column threes enjoy that, where they also enjoy opportunities in the social arena. So this could also be an individual that you may want to call up for one of those brainstorming meetings and have them lead that, especially if they're a 1-3. So now you have that assertive wanting to be in charge, and you have this 3 that's wanting to be on stage. So now you can start kind of see how the columns, how these dominant traits kind of play with each other. And so now you're speaking to 2 of their dominant traits. You're giving them a chance to lead, and you're giving them a chance to be in the front of the house. Lastly, you want to coach on developing active listening skills. Maybe doing some role playing with them in regards to make sure that they are not missing the facts, figures, and numbers, the data. Having and making sure that they're asking questions to find out what the person truly wants. Because imagine, again, if this person is a 1-3, ones feel like, okay, I kind of know the direction that I'm going to take, and if I haven't really asked enough questions, I may just kind of go in a direction that the client prospect did not want to go because I didn't ask enough information. So understanding, how to provide those active listening skills to your column 3 team members is very beneficial. Then for the analyticals, if you have analyticals on staff, you want to give them fact-based kudos, because you remember they are facts, figures, numbers. So if I just go out and say, hey Barb, you did a great job today, thank you so much, and Barb is a 4, Barb is rolling her eyes like, okay, whatever, Tanya, okay, thanks. It means nothing to Barb because I didn't back up what I said. But if I said, Barb, I really like the way you handle client XYZ. It was very efficient, and they really got a lot of knowledge from you in regards to their insurance needs. So now Barb has a little bit more meat to grasp. Oh, so I did a great job with client XYZ when I talked about their insurance needs. Okay, now I have something to hold on to. So make sure that you're backing up what you're saying with proof. Next, you want to be upfront and direct. You don't necessarily want to beat around the bush with your column 4s. I like to say it's called the unwich. Just give me the meat. I don't need the bread. I don't need the fluff. Just say what I have to say. So, if I'm talking to Beth and I'm like, Beth, I had a great vacation. I went to California. I went to Napa Valley. The grapes were gorgeous. We went to 5 different wineries, and I just go on and on and on. And all Beth asked was, how was your weekend? Beth now has the rolling of the eyes, like, okay, Tanya, that's way too much. You could have just said, I had a nice weekend. I went to the winery. I went to Napa. I went to the wineries. I didn't have to go in about the grapes and all of that. She just kind of wanted, just be upfront, direct, to the point, no fluff. And then lastly, quantifiable goals. So I can't just, say, hey, Christine, why don't your goal for the day is to, let's just say, for example, your goal for the day is to clean up the files in the O drive. Okay, so what does clean up mean? I don't understand that term, and you didn't tell me how long. Is it to the end of the day? Is it all day? What do you want me to do with these files? But if I said, Christine, in over the next 3 hours, if you could go into the O drive and I need you to clean up the marketing folder in regards to get rid of everything that is older than 2015. Now Christine has marched. It's quantifiable. She knows exactly what what she's getting graded on, what the goal for the next 3 hours are going to be. So you want to, quantify what you're giving your column 4s. And when we talk about quantifying, when we're talking about goals, that kind of leads us over to our next section. And I hope you all have been completing your shades, your columns, because at the end of this webinar, we are going to give you an opportunity to complete a free assessment, a free leadership report, so you can see how close you really are to what you think you are. And so definitely make sure you're shading them in, and then you can kind of do that compare and contrast off of our free leadership report, which is a 9-page report that gives you your strengths, your challenges. So let's move over to the next pair, which is columns 5 and 6. And 5 and 6 basically measures the pace. So a tall column 5 is a multitasker. They strive to get things done quickly and can handle competing priorities. The individuals that fall within the column 5 um, leadership style is our facilitator leaders and our resourceful leaders. The challenges for our column 5, our expeditious type of individuals, is overextension because, right now, if I say, okay, column, column 5s, I'm talking to y'all, come back to the webinar, because column 5s, they are trying to do 18 different things right now. They're like, oh, I got 60 minutes free time. I mean, I'm going to be listening to this webinar, but now I can check emails, I can answer some voicemails, I can order my lunch. I have 60 minutes kind of carved out on my Outlook calendar for me to do a lot more things. And that's how column 5s can sometimes become overextended because they're trying to do too much at once. And then that leads to them and the patience piece. So that's why patience is a challenge, because you want things now. I want it fast. I want it in a hurry. Like I just had this happen. Cynthia, she is my coworker, and I had forwarded her an email. And so then I went to Kim and I said, Kim, oh, I want to show you this email. I said, Cynthia, can you go ahead and forward Kim the email, because I was standing in between both of their offices. So instead of walking back to my office, forwarding the email, Cynthia was right there. She could just forward it from her desk. Well, I thought it took her forever to forward this email. I'm like, what are you doing? All you do is click on the email, click the forward, and really, since it's an internal email, all you have to do is click K and Kim Bussey comes up and the email is sent. But it took her forever. I mean, I was like looking at her and she was like, Tanya, I need you to lower your 5 because that's, you're becoming impatient. And that is one of the challenges with the 5. And I see I busted you, Mike. Yes, I'm glad you came back, Mike, because I'm talking to you. That is a challenge of a 5. And I mean, I struggle with it, and I know my profile, and I'm self-aware. And so I have to calm it down. I mean, we all slip up every now and again, but I don't stay in that mode. Like I don't stay in that, come on, Cynthia, hurry up, send it to me, send it to me, send it to me. I realized, okay, let me calm down my 5, because what Cynthia wanted to do was she wanted to type in something to Kim and say, Tanya wanted me to forward you this, even though I was standing in between both offices. That's another column that we're going to get to in a minute as to why she needed to do that piece. And I'll bring this story back up. So remember, kind of put this story in your little, I got to remember that folder, because I'm going to bring that back up, because there's another column involved in that whole piece as well. But that's the challenge. And then also the last is the follow-up. This is why we have Outlook calendars. I have things dinging all the time, because I know I will say, you know what, I'm going to remember to do that. And if I don't write it down, if I don't put it someplace to ding and remind me, I will not remember. You know why? Because I have 5 other things, or 200 other things that came through since the time I said I needed to do this on Thursday, and Thursday actually coming. So follow up and follow through is a challenge for a 5. But like I said, all of these columns have their strengths, all these columns have their challenges. And so when we think about the positions, and we think about us as managers and leaders, we just want to really work on our strengths and manage us through our challenges, and manage your people through their challenges. Because I know follow-up and patience is an issue for me, I make sure that I set reminders in my phone, so I won't forget to call somebody. I won't forget to to send out that email. So you want to make sure that you are definitely utilizing things. And I see Patricia said, yes, I don't know what I would do without my calendar as well. On my phone, I love Apple, that I can just say, Siri, remind me to ... and it puts it in. I don't even have to type it anymore. That's saving me so much time. I love that as a 5. And so now let's go to the column 6 type of individuals. Column 6s, their strengths are that they are methodical, routine oriented. They have great follow up and follow through because they're completing one task at a time. They're not letting things come in the way. Those are the individuals that have been right on in this webinar that have been paying attention to me the whole time because they're probably writing notes and things like that because they're the six. They dedicated this 60 minutes to focus on leadership advantage, and that's what I'm going to do. And so with the column sixes, just imagine, like, I want my accountant to be a column six. I would like my doctor to be a column six. I don't need you to be thinking about or trying to, operate on three different people if I'm on the table. For my accountant, I don't want you to think about trying to listen to a webinar, trying to make an appointment, to get your car looked at while you're balancing my budget. Now let's just focus on balancing my budget. So all of these columns, they have a specific area within your organization that their strengths speak to exactly what you need in that role. And you definitely don't want to have one side, or everybody exactly the same. You need to have these different columns within your organization. That's how you really build a well-oiled team and a well-oiled company. So let's talk about the challenges of the column six, those tight deadlines. As if you all couldn't tell, Cynthia, my coworker, she's a column six. So with me sitting there saying, could you just go ahead and forward the email? Could you hurry up? You know, you she's like, I will get to it. I'm getting to the email. I had to send something else out because she was laser focused. When I asked her to forward out an email, another email was already open that she was working on. So no, I can't just click off that and send you yours at your timeline because no, I'm doing this one right now. And then constant change is also a challenge for column six type of individuals. They are the ones that feel like, it kind of flusters them if there's always upheaval. Where other people, the column fives, they live for that. Like I live for variety. If I had to sit there and do the same thing all the time and there was no change and every day my schedule looked exactly the same and there was no fires for me to put out, I would lose my mind. I like being the firefighter. I like putting out the fires. And Cynthia is so great with the long range type of processes or procedures that we have to do. So that's why we make a dynamic team because I can put out the fires that are coming through and she can handle the things that are more long range. So now everybody is working to their strengths and that's why this is a well-oiled machine if I do say so myself. And then also the challenge, short-term goals, because column sixes, they like to see the long range. They like to see the long haul. They don't need those quick wins like us column five type of individuals. So you don't necessarily need to break out their goals because if we break them out, now they're feeling nervous, like, am I going to be able to make it? Am I going to be able to get it? But if I set that goal out for a month, okay, I have 30 days to make this. So that's awesome. I can do that in 30 days. And so that gives them their win. So you want to make sure that you're working everybody to their strengths. So let's do a quick little exercise. And if you have been on one of our webinars before, you may have done this time exercise. So what I would like is when I ask you to, I would like everyone to close their eyes. And then open your eyes, excuse me, when you think 30 seconds has elapsed. So what I want you all to do is when you think 30 seconds has elapsed, just go ahead and raise your hand. So, and I can't tell if you've opened up your iPhone and looking at the timer. So we're just going to go on the honesty theory. So if everyone would just go ahead and close their eyes, open your eyes when you think 30 seconds has elapsed. Close, open. All right. Well, just to let you all know, the first person that I saw open their eyes at about 12 seconds, and I'll just give the first name. Hope was the first person that I saw that opened their eyes. A lot of a bigger portion of you all opened it around 24, 25, and some people had not opened their eyes at all by the time I called time. And so what this kind of exercise, and this is a great exercise for you to do with your team as well, it kind of shows you that, okay, let's all for a moment think that we worked for Hope. Guess what, Hope? You just got a bunch more people that you're managing right now. And Hope opened her eyes at like 12 seconds. So Hope thinks that what we can do in what really takes 30 seconds to do takes 12 seconds to do. So we better be running really, really fast if we're working for Hope. But that's that column 5 because we want those quick turnaround times. We want it now, we want it fast. So you have to realize, okay, not everybody works on our timetable. So let's start out with the column 5 individuals. If you are a column 5, if you have column 5s on your team, you want to give them those short-term goals. You want to break those monthly goals down into weekly goals. Or if you have weekly goals, you want to break them down into daily goals, because the way you keep that column 5 engaged is by letting them get those wins, letting them cross those hurdles so they can run to the next one. But if you give me these long range goals, it demotivates me, not motivate. Next is you want to ensure that they have a tracking tool in place, because we've all said it, my Apple iPhone, my Siri is my best friend. So she is really my administrative assistant. She keeps me on track. So you want to make sure that they have a tracking tool in place as well. And then you want to diversify their responsibilities, because think of yourself. If you're a column 5, if you had to do one singletary thing the whole day, you would probably lose your mind. I can't do this. Exactly. So you want to diversify the responsibilities of the individuals that are on your team that are column 5s as well. So you want to give them that opportunity to do different things, meaning you don't necessarily have to set a schedule for them. If you need this project done by the end of the day, and the project has several different components, you don't necessarily need to guide them as to which component they need to do first. Just giving them that information about, okay, this needs to be done, and you can kind of complete it any way, the best way you see fit in regards to giving them those, diversifying those responsibilities for the individual. So now let's talk about if you're managing a column 6. You want to provide them with that priority checklist. So let's say, for example, it's on the service side of the house, and that you need someone that is, excuse me, that you need the voicemails answered in 30 minutes, emails answered in an hour. Okay, now that I have this information, I would provide that to my column 6 type of individuals, because with that priority checklist, I now know, okay, if I'm a column 6, okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. So now I know if I get a voicemail that I have such and such time to answer it. If I get an email, I have such and such time to answer that email. That's why I can now know what takes precedent. Or maybe in your office, it might be the type of information that they're taking in. Let's say payments, if they're taking in a payment, or if they're taking in a change of address, those probably have different priorities. A change of address may not be as important as someone making a payment on their policy. That might be more important, because if they're right up to the time, you want to make sure that the payment gets posted. So you want to create those priority checklists for the individuals, because that's going to give that column 6 that comfort. And then next, you want to give them time to settle into the routine. We don't want to have a lot of different things happening at once. Give them a chance to get acclimated. And then lastly, we don't want last minute changes. Give them as much advance notice as possible. Even if you don't have all the details ironed out, just let them know that something is going to happen in the future, so they can kind of start getting themselves in that change mind mode. That is what gives those column 6s that comfort in regards to feeling comfortable in a column 5 environment, because most of our environments is a column 5. And that's just because people have their iPhones or so you could, as you all can tell, I'm an Apple person, but okay, for the people that have Droids, people have Droids out there as well. I don't really know why. I'm just joking. But for your phones, we have those reminders that are set. And so, so if I send you an email, you've probably gotten it on 3 different devices. So that's why we kind of live in a society of I want it right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your department needs to be a column 5 department. Like I said, my accounting department is probably more of a column 6, and that is how I would want my accounting department to be. And so you want a little bit of all of these columns once again in your office. So let's talk about the last pair. The last pair is columns 7 and 8. So let's talk about the strength of a 7. That they're resilient, thick-skinned type of individuals. They're big picture focused, where our challenge for a column 7 are individuals, are details, because, we would rather just delegate out the details. Column 7s are also not great at following guidelines because they kind of want to chart their own way, kind of figure it out themselves. And those step-by-step assignments, not necessarily their strong suit. The autonomous type of individuals, or the people that have that as one of their dominant traits, are innovative leaders and advocate leaders. So because they like to kind of do their own thing, I like to say our autonomous type of individuals are individuals that would rather ask for forgiveness. And our by the book individuals would rather ask for permission. The strength of this by the book, or these column 8 type of individuals, are that they are structured, detailed, or oriented, and they enjoy following guidelines. I don't want to have to try to think up, how to complete the project. If you just tell me how to do it, I'll do it. This is not to say that by the book people, want to be micromanaged, or that they are micromanagers. If you are a by the book type of individual, you are just setting your people up for success. You're giving them the roadmap that they need to follow. And that's how a by the book type of manager manages. The challenge of that is ambiguity. Sometimes we're not going to be able to think about or have in place every contingency. So sometimes we have to kind of go with our gut, and by the book managers have a harder time going with their gut. And because by the book managers want to make sure that everything is done accurately and they have a high quality standard, delegation is a bit of a challenge. And as a manager, we all know that we have to delegate. What the good thing though is, as your team matures, as your team gets more tenure, you'll feel easier at delegating. So some of you all right now may be a tall column 8 and you're thinking, Tanya, I can delegate. But then ask yourself, how long have you been with this team and who do you delegate to? If you're a tall column 8, you can delegate to people that you feel have the exact same quality standards as you, because you know that they're going to do quality work. When new members come into your team, you have a harder time delegating. And then the last challenge is rebounding, that resiliency, because column 8s, they strive for perfection. They want to make sure that they do everything right. And when they fall short, they beat themselves up more than anybody else would. And so being able to bounce back and get back on that horse is a bigger challenge for them. So if you're managing that tall column 7, is you want to give them upfront, you want to obtain the upfront agreement on essential policies. Let them know where that line in the sand is. You also want to reward them for consistent compliance with more autonomy. So if you are following the rules, if you have filled out the report that you're supposed to fill out accurately, then I will give you more leadway. So that's how you kind of reward them for doing the things that you want them to do, that positive reinforcement. And lastly, creating the opportunities that highlight their creativity. Column 7s, they like to think outside of the box. So you want to give them ways to be creative. So let's say, for example, there is a project that needs to be done. You can just tell them, here, do the project, and then let them kind of be creative. Like, I need it by the end of the day, and I need it to have the figures from last year. Now, whatever else they want to do, just let them be creative and kind of complete it that way. For our column 8, so if you're managing a column 8 by the book, You want to give them very clear parameters and expectations. They don't necessarily want to chart their own way. Just let me know exactly what you want. This is to say, if you want me to do a report on the 15th of every month, tell me exactly what you want that report to look like. I will give it to you the 15th of every month. This is not to say that you have to come to me on the 13th and say, okay, Dave, are you going to have that report ready? Dave is already going to have it ready because you got the upfront clear expectations in the beginning. Next, giving them feedback and being diplomatic and constructive, because don't forget, column mates are sensitive to criticism and rejection. So I want to make sure that I am being constructive and not attacking them, but attacking, or excuse me, not attacking at all, but addressing, excuse me, the issue, not the person. And lastly, you want to encourage them to find alternative solutions. Try to, try to get them to think a little bit, outside of the box. Or, okay, we had something similar to that last week. How did we handle that? So to kind of get them thinking in that way is also beneficial. So now we've talked about all of the columns, and we've talked about working with the different team members of the column. So let's talk about, you know, once again, all of those columns come up into the different type of leadership styles. And once again, there's 17 different types. And at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to click a link to find out what your style is. So the leadership effectiveness, you want to know your team strengths and challenges. You want to ensure that you're conveying the goals clearly, giving them those milestones, as well as doing a how am I doing feedback session. So as I close out, a leadership advantage has a plan. You know yourself. You're going to know your team. You're going to place the people in roles that are compatible. Like Cynthia and I were in the perfect role for our strengths and for our challenges. And if we weren't, we would be able to, Omnia would definitely find other areas that we're better suited for because we're great employees. And so when you're thinking about, the different leadership, and like I said, you're going to get your own report, it looks like this. It's a 9-page report. We also offer other reports in regards to hiring, as well as a cognitive report, like my dad used to say. This kind of gives you the information of, does the person have the 6-pack of Cokes in their head with the holder or without? Because sometimes you've probably met people that had the 6-pack, like they had the information, but it was just all rolling around in their head and it wasn't necessarily in a great order. And then we have other developmental suites like our collection styles, our customer service style, our professional development styles. And these are written for your team, meaning that the person can read it and you all can really have a great session in regards to review time, goal setting, because now you're seeing exactly who this person is. Are there any questions? And if there are, please type them down at the bottom. And I'll go ahead and flip this over so you all can hit this Try Our Assessment Today tab. And don't forget, you need to, and this is the promo code, because you will need the promo code in there. And so if you want your free assessment, if you have not experienced the leadership report, if you want to see how your graph compares to what you all what you all shaded in today, definitely do a Try Our Assessment. I know when I've done this session in the past, the question that I get is, what are the 5 things a great manager needs to display to their team? It is motivate their employees as individuals. It's to assert themselves to overcome obstacles, which, reduces unproductive conflict. Is to create a culture of accountability, which means slackers, they don't get away with it, and star performers get recognized. Accountability is not a bad word. It's an equalizer. And then the 4th thing great managers do is build trusting relationships. And you do that through communicating, understanding exactly how your people communicate, receive communication will be very beneficial, and that's going to help building the relationships. That's why we created those that's why we created those other types of reports, so you can have that open dialogue, so they can read the report, you can read the report, and you all can be on the same page. And lastly, make informed, unbiased decisions for the good of the team and the company, so we don't show favoritism. I want to thank you all for joining me today. And yes, Mike, you can get a list of the 5 things that I am giving you right now. Can't write that fast. Well, you should raise up your column 5, Mike. No, I will definitely get this list out to you. And I just want to make sure that I haven't missed any questions. Yes, you can complete the assessment anytime today. Just make sure you write down the promo code because you will need the promo code. And it takes you about 15 minutes to complete. Okay, I believe. Oh, how do you access it? Well, this is what I would do. I would click on the link and then I would bookmark it. Because once you click on the link, it opens up to a web page for you. And then I would bookmark that page. But I would go ahead and write down the promo code. Thank you so much, Hope. And all of the people that are giving me the accolades, you are perfect because I am a column 3. And we all found out today that column 3s love kudos. So congratulations for feeding my 3. And I know the column 4s are like, well, I stayed on the webinar, so you should realize that I thought you were doing a great job. And that's how the column 4s are. And I appreciate the column 4s as well because we definitely need people that just cut the brass tacks. It is what it is. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Patricia. Well, I think I have answered all the questions and we are right at the time. Like Sarah said, the recording will be up on our YouTube page in about a week. Mike, I will send you the 5 things about the great manager, what great managers need to display. And I want to thank you all for joining me today. And don't forget our next section, is next Thursday, How to Succeed as First-Time Managers.